Under the moonlight, the scars on your wife's back shimmer with a strange golden hue. In her evasive eyes hides a fear far deeper than poverty. That morning, when the village chief was found dead, you saw a tuft of bloody fur clinging to the corner of her lips. "Don't be afraid," she said, trembling as she shoved a money pouch into your hand. "It's enough to get you out." That's when your grandmother's dying curse came flooding back. No woman of the Chen family lives past 30. And the claw that tore open your shoulder last night, it wore the silver bangle you placed on her wrist at your wedding. Moonlight, sharp as a poisoned dagger, sliced through the cracks in the thatched roof and stabbed straight into your pillow. Chen Qing rolled over, the fresh scab on her back settling right into that cold light. Drowsily, you reached out to tuck in her loose collar, but the moment your fingers brushed her skin, they froze. The scab shimmered faintly gold in the moonlight, like tiny scales breathing on her back. "Don't touch it!" She sprang away, her voice shrill like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. In the dark, her eyes bulged wide, pupils swirling with something unreadable, something darker than your grandfather's corpse that winter, colder than the tax officers from the county, deeper than the poverty of your dirt brick bed. That fear pressed against your chest, heavier than the creaking roof beams in a drought year. You opened your mouth, but the words, "What's wrong?" froze in your throat under her gaze. She hastily pulled her tattered hemp-robe tight and curled away from you, leaving only the tense, trembling outline of her back. That golden scar still glowed faintly in the dark. For the first time in 10 years of sharing a bed, she felt as foreign as the shadow of a predator lurking in a mountain stream. The news of village chief Wang Lizi's death broke with the first crow of the rooster. A crowd had gathered under the old locust tree at the village entrance, buzzing like a swarm of excited flies. You pushed through. The stench of blood and damp earth hit your nose. All that remained was a dark red patch soaked into the mud, a few clumps of hair still attached to torn flesh, and some shattered, dirt-covered bones. It was too brutal to be a human crime. "A tiger! It must have come down from the mountain," someone yelled. "Doesn't look like it," muttered old Zhao, the crippled hunter, squatting by the prints in the dirt. His cloudy eyes narrowed on the tracks and the bloody tuft of yellow fur in his hand. "This looks like a female, but a tiger doesn't eat this messy. No whole bones left?" "That's not right." His voice trailed off, thick with doubt and an uneasy chill. For a heartbeat, the crowd fell eerily silent, then burst into terrified whispers. Your stomach churned, nausea rising, but your eyes locked onto something in the mud, a flattened, blood-streaked silver bangle. The same crude design, the same worn clasp. You traded 3 months of back-breaking labor for that silver and had it forged at the lame silversmith shop by the town gate. You personally clasped it onto Chen Qing's slender wrist on your wedding night. Ice surged up your spine. You spun around, shoving past villagers, stumbling all the way home. You threw open the creaky wooden door. The stove was cold. A strange metallic scent hung in the air. Chen Qing sat with her back to the door by the broken water jar, scrubbing something furiously. You rushed in, grabbed her wrist too hard. She cried out. The ladle clattered to the floor. She looked up, panicked. A piece of dark red flesh, studded with coarse yellow hairs, clung to her lip. A smear of fresh blood still stained the corner of her mouth. Time stopped. You stared at her. She stared at you. Your eyes searched hers, pleading for denial, desperate with terror. Her eyes broke flooded with despair, drowning any last trace of hope. "Ashan!" Her voice shook uncontrollably. With her other hand, she pulled out a heavy, blood-speckled cloth pouch and shoved it into your hand. The cold coins bit into your palm. Take this. Leave Fangzhou. Go as far as you can. Never come back. The pouch reeked of Wang Laizi's sour sweat and fresh blood. It scorched your nerves like a branding iron. You flung her hand away. The pouch hit the floor with a clink, spilling dozens of bloodied copper coins that rolled across the ground like countless mocking eyes. Chen Qing, tell me what the hell this is, you roared, shattering the oppressive silence. Dust rained down from the rafters. Did you kill Wang Laizi? What have you turned into? She stumbled back, hit the water jar with a thud, and finally broke into tears. Streaks ran through the blood on her face as despair swallowed the last glimmer in her eyes. Her body trembled violently. A strangled growl escaped her throat like a trapped beast. I didn't want this. Ashen, I didn't. I was so hungry. Too hungry, couldn't stop it. It's like something's burning in my bones. She clawed at her arms, nails tearing skin, drawing thin lines of blood. Her motions were wild, inhuman. Horrified, you watched coarse yellow hairs burst from under her skin along her neck. Your grandmother's wrinkled face flashed in your mind, her dying eyes blazing with hatred, her final words exploding like a curse. No woman of the Chen family lives past 30. It's retribution. A monster born in the bloodline. Cold gripped your heart like a vice. Chen Qing's 30th birthday was next month. You always thought it was just an old woman's nonsense. Retribution? A monster? Could the curse be real? You stared at your wife, her body racked with unbearable, unnatural pain. Then, roar! A monstrous snarl tore from her throat. It wasn't human. That sound, low, savage, primal, rattled the warped window panes. Her body arched violently, bones cracking with sickening snaps as something invisible twisted and stretched her frame. Brownish yellow fur burst from every inch of exposed skin, spreading like wildfire. Her nails grew fast, curving, thickening until they became 3-inch-long, glinting claws. Her claws dug into the hard-packed dirt, gouging deep trenches. The once gentle apricot eyes you loved were now vertical golden slits, burning with wild beast rage and endless agony. They locked onto you. Run! Ashan! Run! A mangled voice, half human, half beast, broke through her snarling muzzle, fangs gleaming. It was the last flicker of Chen Qing begging you to escape. But your feet refused to move. Terror and 10 years of love nailed you in place. And in that fatal hesitation, the beast that was once your wife lunged. A blur of yellow and blood surged forward faster than thought. Pain exploded through your left shoulder. You managed a strangled scream before a massive force hurled you across the room. You slammed into the dirt wall hard. Everything inside you shifted. Dust fell like rain. Your vision blurred. Your shoulder burned. Warm blood soaking half your shirt. You raised your head. Barely. The creature crouched where you had just stood, panting. Drool dripped from its fangs, spattering the dirt. It slowly raised a paw thick, fur covered, and on its wrist was a silver bangle, the same crushed, blood-stained one you once slid onto a wrist that wedding night. Its cold gleam stabbed your eyes. Despair hit like a bucket of ice water. Run? Where could you run? The monster your wife had become was faster, stronger than anything you could imagine. You scrambled back, pressing into the wall. No escape. Those golden eyes locked onto you, all trace of Chen Qing gone, only a starving beast remained. Its hind legs tensed. A low growl rumbled in its throat. Death surged toward you. But at the last second, whoosh, a sharp sound ripped through the air. Monster, you will harm no one more. A voice rang out like thunder. A gray blur burst through the door like lightning. The newcomer was a lean, travel-worn, middle-aged Taoist in a faded gray robe. A longsword strapped to his back, it was Taoist Xuan Zhen, a wandering cultivator who had arrived just in time. His eyes flashed like lightning, sweeping over the carnage in the room and locking instantly onto the ferocious tiger poised to strike. With 2 fingers of his right hand shaped like a sword, Xuan Zhen thrust forward so fast only a blur remained, aiming straight for the tiger's brow. A faint green glow flickered at his fingertip. Thud! A muffled impact rang out as though striking hardened leather. The beast's massive body staggered backward from that single strike. Its lunge toward you suddenly halted. It shook its enormous head with a roar of pain. The golden slits of its eyes blazed with fury. In a flash, it abandoned you, its nearest prey, and turned its wrath toward Taoist Xuan Zhen. A provoked beast is the most dangerous kind. Roar! The deafening bellow shook the rafters as the tiger's hulking form blurred into motion, a raging yellow shadow slicing the air like a tidal wave as it pounced toward Xuan Zhen. Its claws slashed out, glinting cold, aiming directly for the Taoist's throat. It moved so fast that only streaked after images remained in the dim light. Xuan Zhen's face was as still as deep water. He didn't flinch. Just as those deadly claws reached his robe, he shifted his stance with uncanny precision. His gray robes billowed, and his body floated away like a willow leaf in the wind, narrowly avoiding the stone-splitting strike. At the same time, the sword on his back had somehow left its sheath by half an inch. The cold blade arced upward, slicing toward the tiger's softer underbelly. Shrock! The sound of tearing cloth rang out as the blade parted fur and skin, drawing a line of fine red beads along its flank. But the wound wasn't deep. It only drove the tiger into an even more frenzied rage. Its massive tail lashed out like a steel whip, howling through the air toward Xuan Zhen's ribs. He twisted away just in time. The tail missed him by a hair, smashing instead into the old water jar with a thunderous crash. Crash! The thick ceramic jar shattered instantly, dirty water and shards flying everywhere. The tiger didn't pause. Missing its strike, it launched itself again with a thunderous kick of its hind legs. Dirt flew. Its enormous jaws opened wide, the stench of rot pouring forth. Gleaming fangs lunged at Xuan Zhen's head like it meant to crush him in one savage bite. Xuan Zhen's eyes narrowed like a hawk's. As the tiger lunged, he bent backward at an impossible angle, nearly brushing the ground. His left hand darted to a plain gray pouch at his waist, and in the next instant, he pulled out a talisman, a dark yellow charm painted with vermilion runes that seemed to glow in the dim light. Heaven and earth converge, mystic hearts command, freeze. His voice thundered like spring lightning, shaking the rafters. He flicked his wrist, and the talisman came alive, transforming into a streak of golden light that shot straight toward the tiger's gaping maw. The tiger seemed to sense the threat instinctively. Mid-pounce, it faltered and tried to twist its head, unleashing a roar to blast the talisman away. But it was too late. The talisman flashed and struck with unerring precision, flying straight into its open jaws. Warning. A strange, muffled chime like a struck bell echoed from deep within the tiger. Its massive form jolted as if smashed by an invisible hammer. All motion stopped. Its limbs froze midair, locked in place. The burning rage in its golden eyes vanished, replaced by confusion and pain. A strangled, choking growl rose from its throat as its entire body trembled violently. Two opposing forces seemed to be tearing it apart from within. Xuan Zhen seized the fleeting moment, springing to his feet. His face had paled clearly. The talisman had drained him greatly. He bit the tip of his right index finger. Blood welled up, and with that blood he drew a complex symbol in the center of his left palm. Chanting rapidly, he whispered, "By Mystic Heart's decree, bind the demon. Lock its form now." With the final word, he thrust his left palm forward. The blood-drawn rune on his palm blazed bright red, detached, and transformed into a searing chain of pure crimson light, burning like a strip of living flame. The chain, hissing and crackling, slithered through the air like a living serpent and wrapped around the immobilized tiger. A horrifying sound, like flesh searing under a branding iron, filled the room. The stench of scorched fur and the tiger's tortured scream exploded outward. The chain sank deep into its flesh like molten iron. The pain drove the beast into a frenzy its last, hysterical struggle. It twisted, roared, thrashed, shaking the entire hut. Dirt rained down, the walls groaned. It felt like the whole place would collapse any second. The crimson chain flickered wildly under the tiger's convulsions, its light sputtering like a candle about to die. Xuanzhen's face twisted in strain, veins bulging, sweat pouring down. He pressed his sword, formed right hand against his left wrist, desperately maintaining the spell's power. It was clear he'd reached his limit. He shouted at you, voice sharp as a whip. "What are you standing there for? Run! That thing is completely corrupted. These seals won't hold long. If it breaks free, we're both dead." His roar snapped you out of your daze, your soul half shattered by the scene before you. The agony in your shoulder and the hot rush of blood reminded you. Death was coming. You had to run. Instinct kicked in, drowning out shock and grief. Gritting your teeth through the pain and dizziness, you scrambled toward the door on hands and knees. Just as you reached the threshold of that hellish room, a scream tore through the air, sharp, agonized, and soaked in despair. It sliced through the tiger's roar, through the hum of the binding chain, and stabbed into your heart like a blade. Ashan! That voice. It was Chen Qing, your wife's voice. Though warped and ragged with beastly growls, the core, the soul-crushing sorrow in it, you knew without a doubt. You froze, body shuddering as if struck by a hammer. Your foot halted on the doorstep. You turned back. The beast, wrapped in burning chains, writhing in agony, suddenly went still briefly, strangely. In its golden, rage-filled eyes, something shattered. For a fleeting second, they flickered like broken glass. Pain, thick, overwhelming pain pulsed through them. The savage glow receded like a tide, and in its place came a piercing clarity and endless despair. That look, it mirrored the way she flinched from your touch in the moonlight just last night. Tears, murky, blood-streaked tears, poured from those enormous tiger eyes, washing the blood-stained fur. "Go!" Came another anguished cry, a soul-wrenching plea squeezed from her maw through blood and saliva. At that moment, bound and burning, her monstrous form summoned one last surge of strength, but not to attack Xuanzhen, not to lunge at you. No, she threw herself to the side with all that remained of her human will, with brutal finality and utter resolve. Crack! A sharp, brittle snap rang out like a snapped zither string. The chain of red light forged from Xuanzhen Taoist's blood and spiritual power, blazing with flame, broke one ring shattered by her fierce, self-destructive thrash in the opposite direction. The red glow dimmed by half in an instant. Xuanzhen reeled as if struck by a hammer. His face turned ghostly pale, and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. He staggered back several steps and barely managed to stay upright by using his sword as a cane. His eyes were filled with stunned disbelief. He never imagined such a fierce human will could still linger inside that monstrous form. And even more unthinkable, it wasn't for survival. It was to self-destruct, to buy that man a sliver of hope. The tiger, too, paid a steep price for that violent twist. The backlash slammed its massive body into the floor with a heavy, bone-rattling thud. Though one loop of the red chain had snapped, the remaining links still burned like searing iron hoops, biting deep into its flesh. Smoke curled upward. It convulsed in agony, letting out low, broken whimpers. That fleeting moment of clarity vanished once more beneath pain and madness, but the struggle had weakened. It seemed that final burst had exhausted the last shred of her humanity. This was the chance, her death-defying gift to you. A tidal wave of sorrow swallowed you whole. Your heart clenched like a cold hand had crushed it. You saw it. You saw the flicker of Chen Qing's despair and pleading in her eyes. You saw her choose self-destruction over submission, all to help you escape. You saw the torrent of tears that filled her gaze. Qingyang. Your cry tore from your throat, soaked in blood and anguish, as all fear, all reason, collapsed under the weight of this soul-shredding grief. You forgot Xuanzhen's warning, forgot the nearness of death, forgot the searing pain in your shoulder. Like a crazed beast, eyes bloodshot, you charged toward her writhing, wounded body, not to strike, not to survive, but simply, desperately, to get close, to hold her. Even if her claws ripped you apart in the next breath. "Fool, come back!" Xuanzhen roared, eyes wide with fury and dread. But wounded by the backlash, he was a heartbeat too late. Like a moth to a flame, you plunged into the tiger's death throes with no thought of turning back. Just as your hands were about to touch her burning, heaving side, those golden-slit pupils so recently glazed with pain and madness locked onto you. So close. The last glimmer of Chen Qing in those eyes vanished, replaced by a primal, pure hunger. The desperate greed for flesh that awakens in a beast facing death. Her jaws opened wide, reeking of blood and finality, far faster than your mind could react. Those fangs, stark white like the Reaper's blades, snapped toward your head. Time seemed to slow to a crawl. You could see the churn of dark red deep in her throat, smell the blood of Wang Lai Zi on her fangs. Despair crushed your breath. "Monster! How dare you?" Xuanzhen's voice cracked the air, beard and hair bristling with fury. On the edge of life and death, he unleashed everything. He spat a mouthful of blazing blood from his heart directly onto his sword. The dull iron blade erupted with searing red light, ancient runes glowing like molten brands. A burst of piercing energy and destruction surged forth. "Mystic heart, banish the demon now!" The sword left his hand, transforming into a crimson thunderbolt engulfed in blood flame Xuanzhen's life's cultivation, and last drop of essence behind it faster than thought, faster than fate. A sickening sound blade through flesh and bone. A spray of blood erupted. The flaming sword pierced the tiger's gaping maw with deadly precision, exploding out through the back of its neck. Bloodlight blazed from the blade like a miniature sun detonating inside her. The beast froze mid-bite, its jaws halting in a grotesque stillness. The roar caught in its throat broke into sputtering gasps. Its massive body jerked, spasmed, and then slumped, boneless. Those golden eyes, once brimming with ravenous madness, dulled, faded, and dimmed before your eyes. Her great head sagged and slammed to the floor with a dull, final thud, kicking up dust. The remains of the red chain flashed, flickered, then died, curling into wisps of blue smoke. Silence, an oppressive, suffocating silence, fell over the blood-soaked, scorched, dust-heavy hut. Only your ragged breaths and Xuanzhen's choking coughs remained. You collapsed inches from her enormous, cooling head. Tiger's blood, thick and steaming, gushed from her mouth and neck wound, spreading rapidly over the cold ground, soaking your knees and hands. The blood scalded your skin. You stared in a daze at the once mighty corpse before you. Her yellow-brown fur, soaked and matted, clumped together with gore. The hole through her skull was unbearable to look at. The eyes that once held warmth, then feral rage, and finally bloodied tears were now hollow, dark voids. All the desperate struggle, all the heart-rending cries, all the terror and grief now settled into that silence, pressing down on your chest until you couldn't breathe. Xuan Zhen leaned on his sword, barely upright, his face ashen, blood still staining his lips. He panted, gaze heavy as it swept over the corpse and landed on you with a trace of pity. Alas, his sigh broke the silence. Such deep attachment. But man and monster walk different paths. He shook his head, turned away from you, and slowly approached the tiger's body. He bent, trembling slightly, and forced open her enormous jaws, wrapping his fingers around the sword hilt. He yanked it free. Shh, lick. A burst of blood followed. With the sword gone, her head slumped sideways, exposing the blood-smeared side of her face, the side you had once kissed. Xuan Zhen didn't even glance at the blade. He let it clatter to the ground. Silently, he pulled a clean yellow talisman from his robe. With solemn care, he pressed it to her forehead. Then, gritting his teeth, he bent and slid both hands beneath her body. With a grunt, he lifted the hundreds of pounds corpse onto his back. In the dim light, his figure looked hunched, drained. Step by heavy step, he carried the tiger corpse out the door. Blood dripped from the body, forming a broken, dark red trail behind him. You remained on your knees, in the sticky pool, motionless like a clay idol with its soul hollowed out. Your empty gaze followed the gray figure as it crossed the threshold and disappeared into the pale morning light. You don't know how long you sat there, perhaps a second, perhaps a century. Outside, the Taoist's footsteps had long faded. You slowly, painfully lowered your head. Your eyes fell on your hands caked in blood and dirt. Then, slowly, ever so slowly, you raised your left hand. Your wrist was bare. Only a deep, bone-deep gash remained, skin torn, flesh mangled, still oozing blood. The mark she left in her final loss of control. And her silver bangle, blood-stained, once precious, was gone, carried away with that corpse, vanishing from your world forever. The hut was empty now, filled only with blood and deathly silence. You curled up slowly, burying your bloodied face into your cold knees. Your shoulder throbbed, your wrist burned. But neither matched the raw, gaping void where your heart had been, where Chen Qing once lived. All that was left was a silent, bleeding hole and a long-forgotten curse, now echoing with cruel clarity. No woman of the Chen family lives past 30. Pale daylight spilled into the hut, steeped in death, but it could no longer reach the darkness in your eyes. Outside, the old locust tree, withered from drought, trembled in the wind. On one of its frailest branches, a tiny, barely visible bud struggled to break through the dead bark in the harsh white light. That bud's tip held a faint, sickly hue of crimson.